Welcome to the review of Reconstruction. This is Mrs. Vujovich-La from G14, and we're going over the Chapter 16 practice questions. What was the original goal of Reconstruction? To reunite the nation and rebuild Southern states without slavery. What was the Freedmen's Bureau? An organization established by Congress to aid poor Southerners. Which of these was not a requirement of Southern state governments according to Johnson's plan for Reconstruction? Agreeing to end all racial discrimination. What did the passage of the 13th Amendment mean for African Americans in the United States? It provided African Americans with a future free from slavery. Why did Congress still refuse to admit Southern states into the Union in 1865, even after those states had established new governments? The representatives of the new governments had been leaders of the Confederacy. How did the Freedmen's Bureau affect education for freed slaves in the South? It established more schools and increased efforts to educate freed slaves. Which of these was not a form of assistance provided by the Freedmen's Bureau? Giving monetary support to freed people. The people of the North are not such fools as to turn around and say to the traitors, "All you have to do is take an oath that henceforth you will be true to the government." By Senator Jacob Howard. Who was Senator Howard representing when he spoke those words? The Republicans opposed to Lincoln's plan for Reconstruction. Which of these was not a change in the lives of slaves as a result of freedom? African American members were welcomed into the congregations of white churches. Why did many Republican Congress members disagree with Lincoln's 10% plan for Reconstruction? They thought that it would make more to they thought that it would take more to restore the Union than for Southern states to swear an oath of loyalty. What was Lincoln's main vision for Reconstruction? To reunite the nation as quickly and as painlessly as possible. How did Lincoln's plan for Reconstruction affect the social structure of the South? African Americans began to demand the same economic and political rights as whites. How did the Wade-Davis bill differ from Lincoln's 10% plan? The Wade-Davis bill required that a majority of Southern males take an oath of loyalty, while Lincoln's plan did not. What were the Black Codes? Laws passed that limited the freedom of African Americans. Why did Southern governments pass the Black Codes? To limit the civil rights of freed African Americans. Why did the Black Codes require that the African Americans sign work contracts? To replace the labor force that had been lost after the ending of slavery. Why did congressional Republicans think that passing the 15th Amendment would help protect their Reconstruction plan? They thought African Americans would vote to support the plan if given the right to vote by the 15th Amendment. The passage of the 14th Amendment changed life for African Americans in the United States because it gave African Americans the same legal rights as white Americans. Why did Republicans feel the need to propose the 14th Amendment before Southern states were readmitted to the Union? To protect the Civil Rights Act from being overturned by the South. The 14th Amendment defined who could be considered a citizen in the U.S. Which group did the amendment exclude from U.S. citizenship? The American Indians. Why did Southern governments feel justified in passing the Black Codes? They felt that the government was intended for white men only and not African Americans. How did the Reconstruction Acts, passed by Congress in March 1867, affect the makeup of the Southern states? The acts divided the South into 5 military districts controlled by a military commander. What right did the 15th Amendment protect for African American men? The right to vote in elections. Why did President Johnson decide to bring an end to the Freedmen's Bureau? He determined the organization to be unconstitutional in the eyes of the law. Which of these was a restriction placed on African Americans under the Black Codes? African Americans were prevented from owning guns. Which of these was a reason behind the creation of the Ku Klux Klan in 1866? The increased government support of African American civil rights. How did members of the Ku Klux Klan demonstrate their anger towards African Americans? They used violence and terror against African Americans to prevent them from voting. In 1872, what change in the Southern state governments brought about the end of many Reconstruction reforms? Democrats regained control of the state governments. How did state legislatures in the South begin to change as a result of Reconstruction? Many white Southerners began to support African American leaders in the state legislatures. Reconstruction state governments in the South did all of the following except pass laws prohibiting discrimination against African Americans. Why was the Ku Klux Klan able to obtain a great deal of power in the South before 1870? Local governments did not do much to stop the violence of the group. How did the Compromise of 1877 affect Reconstruction? It helped end Reconstruction and required the removal of federal troops from the South. The formation of the Ku Klux Klan inspired which action by the federal government? Congress declared that it was illegal to deny citizens equal protection under the law. How did the Democratic group, the Redeemers, attempt to limit the rights of African Americans? They established laws that successfully discriminated against African Americans. What were Jim Crow laws? Laws that enforced the segregation of the races. Why was the verdict in the Plessy versus Ferguson case significant? It legalized segregation in the U.S. as long as separate but equal facilities were provided. Who were the Redeemers? A group of Southern Democrats interested in limiting the rights of African Americans. What steps were taken by the Redeemers to deny the right to vote to African Americans? They set up the poll tax, which required African Americans to pay a fee before voting. How did the sharecropping system limit the opportunities for African Americans to own farms and property? Most sharecroppers lived in a cycle of debt, first buying goods on credit and then failing to make much money selling their crops. Why was the 13th Amendment so important to Lincoln's Reconstruction plan? It ensured that Lincoln's decision to end slavery could never be overturned. Thank you very much for studying hard for the Reconstruction test. Again, Chapter 16, U.S. History. Good luck, study often. Take care.